does everybody remember podiums? Do you remember those things? You're gonna see me shaking my hands all the time. Maybe I could just go behind here. Just talk here for a while. Is this good? Does this work? Anyways, it's a great thrill to be here as a friend of parents, of Parker students, as a friend, as Miles said, of Matt Loffer, as an admirer of TED, and as an admirer of, from all I've seen and heard, you, the Parker students. It's also an even bigger thrill to be on a high school auditorium stage, because when I was in high school, I was way too chicken shit to get up here. And they told me I could swear, parents, so. I remember going to most of the plays at my school and wishing I had the guts to do what my peers on stage were doing, to challenge my lack of self-confidence, to tackle something big and different and out of my comfort zone, to be part of a tight, short-lived, and therefore all the more intense and special community, and most importantly, to risk making a fool out of myself. For most of my time in high school, I could always rationalize not auditioning for plays like Macbeth or a musical, because there was no way I had that in me. But then one time, at the end of my senior year, our school did Play It Again, Sam, the Woody Allen play. And as I watched the lead, who did an excellent job, play the Woody character, a character whose neuroses and feelings of inadequacy were so close to my own, weren't my own, but close to my own, that I thought, damn, that was my part. Oh well, I guess I'll go to college and major in history. Now, I've never been an actor, but these days I do get on stage once a month to do a talk show. It's called The Interview Show. And I describe it as somewhere between Jimmy Fallon and Charlie Rose, although other people describe it as more Wayne's World. Anybody know that movie? Am I that old? Not that old, am I? I don't particularly like the comparison to Wayne's World, but I get it. The Interview Show is homespun, it's intimate, it's in a bar that looks like this. Photo of the bar, so it's just a little house-like thing. And the show features 15 to 20-minute interviews with chefs, with musicians, with comedians, with business people, with athletes, anybody who's passionate about what they do and whom I admire. Hopefully the conversations are meaningful and entertaining. All in all, the show is the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life, save for the 6-year pursuit/borderline stalking of the woman who's now my wife. I don't want to dwell too much, though, on specifics of the show or past episodes we've had. I'd rather focus on the aspects of the show that could apply to things that you do or that you would like to do. But just to give you a frame of reference, here's a quick video, an excerpt of a highlight reel from the last year of the show.
You get to a point where you're obsessed with wrestling, and then all of a sudden girls and music, or sometimes even at 13 or 14, alcohol or whatever gets into people's, that's not for you guys, just...
Why do we have children in the front row? I know that sounds very basic, but I think...
No, nobody has any idea what the Attorney General
Well, I
is.
mean, don't worry. Yeah.
See?
Don't worry, everybody here votes for you, so it doesn't really matter.
But no, just yesterday, in fact, somebody said, oh, State's Attorney Madigan. And I said, no, I'm the Attorney General, but that's okay, you're never going to understand the difference.
Those are different, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
those are very different. What do you think about,
Let me just answer the question.
Oh, right.
So...
This might sound creepy, but what do high school kids wear these days?
That's not creepy, I don't think.
Well, when I grew up, I'll tell you why, because when I grew up in the 80s, 90s, people, they just wore these big, baggy, my wife tells me that she wore this Benetton sweater that was like 9 times too big for her. And then you get this cliche now that everybody's wearing thongs. So what is the...
I don't really know how many of my classmates are wearing thongs, but
I don't know.
That's we can come back.
Are we talking about food? I don't want to talk about food.
Okay, well, let's talk about your life. Let's talk about drugs.
Fine.
Yeah, so you take some shots at Indianapolis in the book.
Oh, I don't know about that.
You say that there's no culture.
I do.
That's...
You know what
Doesn't your wife work at the art museum in
She
Indianapolis?
does work at the art museum.
So that gives you some sense of what the show is about. I started it because I had the idea for it, and as I increasingly get older and older, I can't forgive myself if I have an idea and I don't want to try to pursue it. I also admit I do it a little bit, or I did it to feed my ego, or to seek some form of adoration. That ego element, sometimes healthy, probably more often not healthy, is still very much a part of me, a part of why I do the show. There's still a part that wants to prove myself to myself and to others again and again and again. But fortunately, there's a lot more to why I do the show. So rather than get up here and talk about my insecurities or other mental problems, which would probably bleed into the time for other speakers, I'd like to talk about that lot more. Specifically, I want to talk about the joy of building something that didn't exist before. And doing it not because you focus tested it, or because people were asking for it, or because you thought you would make a lot of money, or because somebody told you to do it, but because you believed it would work, you believed it would bring you and hopefully others some joy, and again, because you believed that you wouldn't be able to live with yourself if you didn't try. And then I want to talk about the unexpected benefits that have come out of doing that. The idea for the show began 5 years ago. I had just seen a show in New York City at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. There was a guy, I wish I could remember his name, who hosted a Q&A with an author. Every month he would take either a comedian or a comic author. This time I saw him talk to John Hodgman. And you know, on the surface, it wasn't anything different than something that you'd see every day in a big city, a Q&A with an author. But there was something about it that was different, kind of the do-it-yourself vibe, the venue, the people who were there, the feeling of fun with, again, something of substance. At the same time, I had also discovered on YouTube and later on DVD a talk show that maybe some of your parents remember, the Dick Cavett Show. Oh my God. Is it that bad? Okay, so a talk show that had aired mostly in the 1970s on a couple of different networks, including PBS. Cavett was witty, he was smart, he knew how to listen to people, he knew when to interject himself, share his own stories, and when to just let his guests shine. So I just wanted to show a clip of kind of what I think is the best kind of talk show. And this is Dick Cavett talking to John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
Do you ever wish it hadn't all happened, John?
Well, I don't regret anything in my life, really, because I've met Yoko and I'm very happy with her. And I feel as though if I didn't go through all that I went through, I wouldn't be with Yoko now. So I don't regret the past. I was just trying to live for this moment. So I don't, you know, I once said, I wish I was a fisherman, meaning I wish I didn't have the kind of mind that makes me want to perform in public, whatever, make records, make films, always be working. I wish I was satisfied to just be peaceful and, you know, living. I thought fishermen was so easy, you know, you just get your breakfast out of the water, you eat it and you go to bed. It's a simple life. Yeah. You know, I mean, I have a sort of longing for that. I think everybody does. Like, I dream of us being an old couple on the south coast of Ireland or something. Just, I remember when we were on Dick Cavett, you know.
So where else? I mean, you just don't see that anymore, and it was kind of starting to drive me crazy. Why isn't that type of interview? It gets funnier. Dick Cavett also interviewed everybody from serious policymakers to a completely stoned out of his mind Sly Stone, and it was interesting, it was entertaining, it was funny. You don't see it that much, in my opinion. There's either one or the other. At the exact same time, meanwhile, right here in Chicago, I was falling in love with a bar many people have fallen in love with, a place called the Hideout. If you haven't been to the Hideout, and if you go to Parker, you should not have been to the Hideout. It's, as you saw in the photo, kind of a house-like thing. It's in the midst of a complete industrial area. It's right next to the Department of Fleet Management. It's right by a Home Depot. It's across the street from a parking lot where I think every single of the city's garbage trucks is. If you don't love the location of the Hideout, you don't love Chicago, because it's just an amazing place to be. But inside the Hideout, that to me is what's magic. You walk into the bar, it's unadorned, unpretentious, but I know I'm biased because I do the show there, but has the intimacy and a warmth and somehow an intelligence that's wholly unique. And past the bar, there's a back room, the performance space, big or small enough to hold 130 people or so, but which on some nights, some of the best nights, only holds like 25 or 30. I remember years ago going to the Hideout on a very blizzardy night. This was back when Chicago had snow, and there was one of my favorite musicians, but it was so bad outside that nobody came. There was like 20 people, and he put on a show that he could not have put on, in my opinion, anywhere else in the world. And even though there wasn't any audience participation or anything like that, it was the essence of like a communion between performer and audience. And I wanted to be a part of that. I was so nervous, I remember, when I emailed the owners of the Hideout with this idea of doing a talk show. But they said, come on in, let's talk about it. And I thought to myself, why? Why do they want to talk to me? Who am I? I had written some articles for Red Eye, I'd done some readings, but other than that, there was no reason that they should be giving up a night at their club, but there was something that was just what the kind of place is. We will take a chance on somebody. So I drew up this whole lengthy proposal. I think it was literally like a 50-page proposal. I think they were just like, let's just give him the show, because I do not want to read this. And I remember I ended my pitch by saying, I'd like to try this once, let's just see how it goes. And the owners of the Hideout said, no, no, no. If you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it monthly. And if that doesn't work, it doesn't work. But let's not think about that. And that was 4 years ago. I remember I'd never been so scared in my life, though, at that moment where they said, you now have a monthly show. But again, it was the best possible thing they could have said. And again, nobody at the time was saying to the Hideout, hey, we want to see a talk show there. And the owners didn't ask about me, or they didn't check my references, or they didn't try to change what I wanted to do. And they didn't say, let's do one show, and then afterwards give everyone a survey, and they can pick what they liked and pick what they didn't, and then that's what you'll change it up for. They just kind of trusted me. Years ago, I used to work at Playboy.com, and there were numerous things about working at Playboy that drove me absolutely insane. I'll tell you one quick story. I wanted to do a story about a haunted house, one of the best haunted houses in the country. It's right outside of New Orleans. It's run by one of the musicians in this group, Pantera. They were a metal group from the 90s. So I said, hey, I'd love to do the story. And the editor said, hey, that would be great. You should definitely do that story. But we've got an idea. Because the web's all about hits, why don't you bring a naked girl down with you to walk through the haunted house with you? That's kind of what, a lot of what the web is. Like, how can we get the most hits? It wasn't what I wanted to do, and the whole event turned into a complete fiasco. For starters, the guy who had to book travel for us forgot that we had a trip to New Orleans and ended up booking me and a Playboy model into a Shoney's Inn. So I don't know if you guys know Shoney's Inn, but it's the specialty of the house is the French toast sticks in the morning. And then the cameraman forgot his battery charger, so the camera ran out like a quarter of the way through the haunted house. That story has nothing to do with my talk. I just wanted to mention it. The reason why I bring up Playboy is because the one thing I always admired about Hugh Hefner, and there's plenty of things not to admire about Hugh Hefner, is that he had an idea that nobody else had, and that nobody else either thought people wanted, or even they scoffed at. And yet he went ahead, I think he worked on it in his own little home, and then from there, for a while, a great, great magazine was born. Name something you love. My bet is it started that exact way, in someone's kitchen, in someone's bedroom, doubling as an office, or in a club like the Hideout. Now, 4 years into the show, there are some things that happened that I hoped would happen, namely that I could do it, that it's become something that people other than my friends and family attend, that we'd get great guests, that while I'm still nervous every time I get up on stage and risk making a fool out of myself, it isn't something that I shy away from anymore. So if you guys are doing a play at Parker coming up and you need a 38-year-old to play a part, just give me a call. I'll give you my number afterwards. But many of the best parts of doing the show have come unexpectedly. Some of them have to do with what's going on in the show in a moment. There are simple moments where I'll be talking to a guest and I can tell that he or she is having a great time. And then I'll look out at an audience member and I'll see them smiling. Or I'll look out at my wife and she'll kind of look back at me. And I think at that moment, wow, I'm really glad that this is happening. I realize that's not the most profound thought you'll hear today, but it would have been easier for that moment to not have happened. For a guest who's getting a little publicity but not a ton to have refused to have been on the show. For the audience member to have said beforehand, you know what, the Hideout's kind of out of the way, it's Friday, I'm tired, I'm not going to go see it. For the people who help me on the show each and every month to say, you know what, it's not worth it for me anymore, it's not worth my time. And it would have been easier for me to not want to put in the work. I know at some point that will happen. I just want to prolong that moment as long as I can. I'll admit I spend time thinking, worrying, and sometimes taking action to make the show bigger than it is, to try to get it on TV or the radio, to see if it could be something that I did for a living. But the biggest lessons, and maybe they're simple ones I've taken from the show, are the exact opposite of that. They're that if you work really, really hard on something, you're going to create something that brings you and hopefully others something a lot better than if you never tackled the project or chased the idea in the first place. The second thing is that you will never know where trying something will lead. The other night, my wife and I had dinner with a couple of friends, and then at a time when I'll admit we'd usually go home and just go straight to bed, we had a friend's 30th birthday party to attend at a theater space in Wicker Park. He's become one of my closest friends, and I had met him through the show. He now shoots the show, and he's done it for 3.5 years. At the party, I got into great conversations with a guy who had helped build a backdrop on the stage for the show, and then a filmmaker who had been on the show, and then several other people. I also had a delicious cupcake at the party. It was a party. We all go to parties. There was nothing completely special about it. But, and this may be selfish and maybe more than a little corny, but looking back on the party now a couple of weeks later, I think, wow, starting the show, taking action on that idea and desire, directly led to spending a few hours in the theater space and feeling like a small contributor to, and as a result, a bigger recipient of a place, a city, a community that without any ulterior agenda or even any unified direction is always willing to tackle something big and different and out of its comfort zone. That's it, but I've got 2 more minutes, so I'm just going to stand here silently. No, thank you very much for listening to me talk today.